A very good morning to you. This is Off the Shelf. I am David Batsoffen, and today I am joined by the author of this particular book, Tidal Pools of the Western Cape, Serai Dowling. Serai, a very good morning and welcome to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
It's only a pleasure. When I first saw this book, I thought, wow, how niche can one get? Tidal pools of the Western Cape, not even of the South African coast. And then I started delving into your book, and I was absolutely blown away. As somebody who lives in the Transvaal, comes from the Eastern Cape, where we don't have many tidal pools. I think growing up there were two, both of which were very dangerous. But these are beautifully photographed, and I think a lot of people drive straight by them, except maybe the one in Muizenberg, because everybody seems to know that one. So take us through the book, the who, why, where, what, and what brought you to this particular point of putting this on the shelf.
Yeah, I think I've been swimming in the tidal pools for the last 20 something years. I grew up in Johannesburg but moved to Cape Town in 1999. So I've spent much more time here than I have up there
Right.
where you are. But through the exploration over the years, I just became curious about how many pools there could possibly be and what was the history of each of the pools and what was the relevance. And in researching all of this, I discovered some of the most beautiful pools in the Western Cape, but also uncovered the relevance of their position along our coastline. We've got an incredibly checkered history that have
Mhm.
left us with the legacy of these very beautiful pools and just what it's meant for us globally, because there are very few places in the world that do, in fact, have tidal pools. So it's been fun to research, it's been fun to find the pools. There are more than 34 pools in the Western Cape, actually. I've only chosen the 34 that I find to be the most beautiful, accessible, and interesting along the coastline, all the way from the West Coast, Silverstrom Strand, around the coast to Gansbaai, so
Mhm.
within a 2 hour drive of Cape Town. And the second edition will include all of the pools all the way up to George. And so
I was
I'm
going to say
hoping that this is well received and people can explore and have fun in the pools. And for those people who are interested, delve a little bit deeper into the history.
that was such a sneaky little segue there in the second book. Rock Hopper Books, who published this one, are going to be very glad about that. Um, let's go through some of them. I picked some of the images, and like you say, you had to research these pools. Was there a lot of information about them, or did you have to dig deep to find the information that you were looking for? Because the book is very specific and it covers a lot of areas that people might not consider. The what to find there. Is it a good picnic spot? Can you take a family? Are you going to be eaten by sharks if you swim at the wrong time? All of those sort of things are covered.
Well, as a child, my mum would often joke with me when we visited the Natal coastline that little baby sharks had been washed into the tidal pools and I was going to be nipped by them. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, and that isn't the case with any of these pools either. Um, it really depends. I mean, for to some extent, there's a lot written about outdoor swimming. So, in terms of accessing research from sort of global perspectives, there's a fair amount out there. But on the South African tidal pools, there's a lot less. So I had to dig very deep. Spent a lot of time in the archives and in the National Library of South Africa in the Cape Town campus, just uncovering news articles and stories and interviewing people who had grown up along the coastline, what the pools had meant to them. So it was incredibly good fun to go deeper on the things that I
Mhm.
thought I knew when you scratch the surface and you just visit the pool and jump in to understand a lot more of the history. But this one, for example, that you've got pictured is Venus Pool in Cape Point. Up until a short while ago, it was one of the lesser known pools. In fact, I would have said there was a handful of people that would have visited it because it's not the most easily accessible. It's not strictly a tidal pool from the perspective of it being man made, closed in rock structure that's built. It is a natural pool. So I've included three natural pools in the book because they are so incredibly spectacular. And I really feel like people should be enjoying them and looking after them. So this is one of those. If you drive into Cape Point, and I give directions in the book, and you turn left, you would be required to drive all the way to the end of a very windy road and walk an extra kilometer to get here. So you have to really want to get into this icy cold water and experience it. But it's incredibly beautiful and the most fantastic place to spend an afternoon picnicking because it's got spectacular views over the entire bay. So
Mm.
that's what's not pictured here, but this is just the pool itself. At a very low tide, usually there are waves crashing over the back wall that make a huge noise and kind of add to bobbing in the beautiful pool that it is.
Now, you mentioned jumping in, and I suppose at this particular point, we should tell the viewers that you are a cold water swimmer. And what brought
Mm-hmm.
that? I mean, growing up in Johannesburg, that's the furthest thing from one's mind. But what made you take up cold water swimming? I'm assuming once you got to the Cape.
I live with the tyranny of fear of missing out. And so and so when I moved to Cape Town and spent time dipping in the pools, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but started to be able to build up more and more of a tolerance to the cold water.
Mm.
And it was when a friend started inviting me to swim with him in Camps Bay Tidal Pool, which is one of the colder pools and can get down to about 9 degrees in wintertime. I just, the beauty of those early mornings and the quiet of piercing the water with your body and exploring the pool and enjoying those benefits just became pretty addictive, actually.
Mm.
There's a quiet, a calm, and a beauty in the connection with a friend doing something like that that was purely addictive. So I found myself signing up for more and more of that sort of thing. Spend a lot of time now outside of tidal pools, now that I've got the confidence to swim confidently in open water,
Mm.
cold open water. So yeah, I spend as much time in the ocean as possible. Although, as someone who, as Justin Fox says in the forward, I'm an incomer from Gauteng.
Yeah.
I wasn't very fond of waves to begin with, which is probably why I ended up in the tidal pools,
Mm.
not wanting to have to deal with kind of the waves and the tides and the things that didn't easily understand.
Yeah.
And now feel much more comfortable. And the pools provide a safe, accessible way to get into open water and cold water swimming.
With this book, do you want people obviously to go and to enjoy what you've been enjoying over the years? But aren't you somewhat sort of hesitant to put the book out, going, all right, now all of a sudden I'll go down to like the pool we've just looked at, and they're going to be 40,000 people there because they read my book and they've all come here. And now the peace and quiet and tranquility that I enjoyed pre-publication is gone out the window.
Well, actually, in the few days that I've been having these sorts of conversations, what's become very interesting is the extent to which locals are very concerned about protecting the secrecy of where their pools are and how they're accessed and when they're accessed. And so when I started swimming in Camps Bay Tidal Pool many years ago, there were only a handful of us in the mornings. And now,
Mm.
even at 5:30 a.m., you have to dodge the dippers if you're wanting to do lengths. So I think that they've quite naturally, there's been a gravitation towards the pools, but I'm hoping to open up people's knowledge to more of the pools
Mm.
that we have so many along our coastline so that we can enjoy a little bit more than where we are at the moment, just with a
Yeah.
handful that are the most popular, like Dalebrook, like Camps Bay. But I have kept a couple of the pool secrets. I haven't
Good.
included all of them. There are a handful which are still, kind of clambering over rocks to get there, even
Yeah.
though it's a man-made pool. I've kept some of those secret, and I maybe will include them in the second edition. But for now, I think
They're
this is more than
yours.
enough.
Yeah, fair enough. Which pool is this that we're looking at?
So this is the Cork Bay pools, actually. So they're
Oh,
best
okay.
known or sort of commonly known as the Brass Bell pools, which is
Mm.
erroneous because they're not owned by the Brass Bell. It just happens to be the restaurant that's next door.
Mm.
And these were built many, many years ago, initially by Bishop Gray. So I've got some incredible photographs in the book to the right-hand side of this view where the
Yeah.
original pool was. And these two were then built thereafter. One was for men, one was for women. They've become quite closed in by the restaurant now, but they are
Mm.
public access. Everyone is welcome. Yeah, it's one of the more beautiful pools and quite fun to stand on that back wall and get
Yeah.
knocked in by the waves when it gets really big.
But in your research, Serai, did you find out how the pools were constructed?
Yeah, absolutely. I went down a whole rabbit hole about the construction of the pools, the requirements, how difficult it is to build the pools, the architectural requirements, the architectural thinking behind pools that are the most recent, like Strandfontein and Monwa BC.
Mhm.
I didn't include that in the book actually. My editor pulled it out and said, "Come on, this is not a master's thesis. Let's not overdo it. Uh,
That's for
it's
book
only
number
you who
three,
has this kind
Serai.
of niche interest." But it's not an easy thing to do. And I think that's what's quite interesting about the advent of the pools is that they were
Mhm.
originally built by private individuals, all illegally. And then when it comes to maintaining these sorts of things, it's difficult and expensive. And so many of them were handed over or gifted to the city in order for the city to do so.
Right.
And the city, for the most part, is doing a fantastic job of looking after the pools as best they can within a resource constrained environment.
Yeah. What are we looking at here? Because this is a stunning shot. It really and truly is.
No, this is what happens when you spend lots of time at the pools. You've got lots of opportunity to take beautiful pictures. So this is Camps Bay Tidal Pool. It's one of my favorites just because of that incredible view. And if you face the other way, you're looking at Lion's Head. You face the other direction out to the ocean, you've got this incredible horizon and a beautiful sunset.
Now, as a cold water swimmer, have you tackled, I suppose, the comrades of cold water swimming, which is to Robben Island or from Robben Island back to shore? Is that something that's in your future, or have you already done it?
Well, I have a very dear friend who's a triathlete and always makes it look very easy. So when we would train together and he would just keep going, I eventually, because he had already done the Robben Island crossing, I thought, well, of course I must do that. But when I looked at how much time is required to train for that kind of swim, I
Mhm.
decided I was happy being a perfectly average swimmer, just doing 800 to a mile at a time. I certainly don't need to take on 9 kilometers of
Yeah, it's
icy
a
cold water. I have
long
other friends
swim.
who have done it. In fact, I was speaking to a friend recently who was relating her crossing experience, and it was pretty harrowing. It was a very difficult swim. So I think the people that do it, hats off to you. It's
Yeah.
very, very tough.
If we go back to an 18-year-old Sarai, just finished school, did you know that this might lie in your future? Or did you have is there a career path other than being a cold water swimmer for you?
I, in fact, have an alternative career. um, yeah, 18-year-old me was always an adventurer. I was on my way to Brazil when I ended up stopping in Cape Town and discovered this kind of lifestyle that I just couldn't say no to. So it's the sort of city that you fall in love with over and over again because you find these hidden gems, whether it's these sorts of pools or on the mountain. So I suppose there was an inevitability because I am also considered an eccentric by many of my friends, and so I suppose there was only one path to take the adventurer and these sorts of things and create a like sort of niche down into a particular area of interest.
And it's you're happy and it's working for you, and now you've got this on the shelves to be proud of.
Mm. Yeah, it feels like a gift, and I'm excited to share it because it has been a project that's been so long coming.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, in the book, it's kind of an intro to. There are lots of sections that are an intro to wild swimming, an intro to the marine life of the pools, an intro to the history. But it's interesting to see the extent to which people are actually wanting to know a lot more about the relevance of these pools in our social structures
Mm.
and so on. So who knows? Maybe I could just keep going down this rabbit hole and see where it lands me.
Well, or this tidal pool and see where that lands you. What do
Well,
we
incredible. Indeed, it lends itself to so many puns.
It does indeed. When your publisher actually watches this, I'm sure she's going to go, no, I know what's coming. We're going to have 4,000 titles for book number three, four, and five, and I'm not interested. Tidal Pool Volume Six. It's like The Fast and the Furious. They just keep adding one sentence, and I think they're on number nine, 10, or 11 now. Who knows? It'll keep going, and maybe the book
Yeah.
is the same.
Well, I've just well, the book is the same to some extent because I think it's a great repository and framework to be able to include details of this nature and potentially build it out to have a little bit more of the pool or more
Mm,
of the pools in it. But
yeah.
I've actually, in the research, realized what you'll realize when you read the book is that there aren't any personal stories of individuals and communities who use the pools, and yet they're
Yeah.
so important. And so I've just kicked off. I'll be creating a documentary telling those stories over the course of the next year. And
Oh,
so,
that's wonderful
the
because
publisher's going, "Oh God, now there's going to be a documentary, one more thing to do."
well, you did say you were eccentric because I'm sure that there are people who have visited tidal pools for, let's say, the last 20, 30, 40 years and who go down every morning at 5 o'clock. You can find him or her there. They're now in their 70s or 80s, but they still get in, do a lap or two, and then go about their daily business. It's become routine, habit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've had incredible conversations as part of my research.
mm,
Mhm.
this pool that we're looking at now.
So this is Dalebrook. In many ways, this is the kind of repository of white privilege in Cape Town because you'll see lots of dippers with probably the highest concentration of Birkenstocks on the South Peninsula will arrive here on a Saturday morning with woolly beanies and coffee cups. But it's actually interestingly, given that it's so popular with many of the privileged folk in St. James, it is actually also a pool which is incredibly like sat at this pool on many occasions, watching religious groups and ceremonies take place,
Mm.
and the accessibility from communities who come down the coastline on the trains. So this is Dalebrook. It's one of the most popular, most beautiful, most easily accessed pools in the Cork Bay, uh, yeah, sort of line.
Mm. What sort of I want to say wildlife do you find in these tidal pools?
Mm.
Are there fish? Are there invertebrates that, despite the number of people using their pools, have made a home there? And obviously, the tide will bring new ones in and take old ones out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty spectacular. It's a really fantastic way to start accessing and understanding the marine life of the peninsula because,
Mm.
there are everything from larger mammals like otters that frequent the pools, and you'll
Oh,
see
wow.
evidence
Okay.
of them if you don't necessarily observe them because they're diurnal.
Mm.
But in the pools themselves, you've got an array of seaweeds, you've got the mollusks, you've got little teeny tiny periwinkles, starfish abound,
Mm.
uh, urchins abound in many of the pools, and octopus, interestingly enough. So in Dalebrook, there's a resident octopus, St. James, Miller's Point, Camps Bay. I mean, I'm sure that most of the pools have got a resident octopus or two. So lots and lots of sea life, which is pretty protected by the walls, actually,
Yeah.
which is what makes it such a readily accessible space for, I think, those teachers to choose, those also for you who enjoy the pools.
And this, I suppose, is one of the better known pools on the Cape coastline. This is the one in Muizenberg, if I'm not mistaken.
It's actually on the other side of the peninsula. This is Milton Pool at
Oh,
Sea Point.
oh, okay. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
Shows how little I know
Part
about
of
other
why
pools in Cape Town.
I know I feel like there should be a pub quiz in which I'm shown photographs and I can win
Yes.
that round just on my knowledge of the pictures of the pools. So this one is Milton Pool in Sea Point, and the reason I chose this photograph is because Charles Darwin actually stood on this spot before there was a tidal pool and
Mhm.
commented that it was one of the few places that you could see three different types of rocks just from where you were standing. So you've got the shale, the granite of the mountain, and I've included that anecdote in the book because I think it's so charming. But I think this picture is just, how that pool is nestled amongst those rocks is just so beautiful with the proximity to the city. It's a very, very great tidal pool.
You sort of look at this and you go, how did somebody imagine a tidal pool here? Walking along the beachfront and go, pool would look good here. And how do we go about constructing it? Because this could
Yeah.
not be easy.
No, and none of the pools that were constructed along this stretch of coast were easy. So the ones
Mm,
that are along the sort of Cork Bay stretch, False Bay, Are the sites are built on the original sites of the pools that were imagined in the early 1900s. The pools
Right.
along this coastline, however, have been moved. So there were a whole lot along Adderley Street. There was another one in Sea Point that is no longer visible. It's been built over.
Mm.
So what we've got here are kind of the remainders of the pools as they were originally imagined, and some of them are newer, just
Right.
because of the imagine that the people who built it wanted access to that beautiful cold icy
Mm.
water, but because of the difficulty of the rocks and getting in and out of the ocean, have built a little safe swimming spot.
Now this one looks like a fish out of water. The more I look at it, the more the more sort of reptile slash fish I see in this image. Where is this particular pool?
This is Miller's Point, and the inclusion of this image was a total indulgence. It wasn't a necessity, but I absolutely love it. I think it's
It's
so
your book,
beautiful.
Serai. You
And
can put in whatever
for me,
you.
I know, and very often I had to remind myself of that. So it was a huge amount of fun to be able to just add in pictures where I felt like it.
Yeah,
And
why
this is
not?
one of them. Actually, this is a local photographer called Jay Cabaz. He does incredible images of tidal pools. And I bought this in from him because it looks like a heart from above. I love it.
Mm.
It's Miller's Point. It's one of the last pools. In fact, it is the last pool that you can access as you drive towards Cape Point, leaving Simonstown
Right.
before you get into the reserve.
Is there, now that you talk about adding stuff in and being a bit indulgent in the book, is there anything in the book now that you think to yourself, I should have added that, or I put that in and I should have added something else?
I think I probably would have built out the histories a little bit more. You know, I found so many incredible historical images over the time, and I didn't include all of them, just
Mm.
imagining that people were not necessarily as interested in those elements as I was. But actually, it turns out there's a huge amount of interest in the historical elements and build that section that looks at the history from colonial times, apartheid to our current circumstance. So I suppose those are the areas I would have liked to beef up a little bit more, but it is what it is now, and I'm quite proud of where it's landed.
And this particular image, it looks like an infinity pool. It's beautiful.
Astounding, right? This is Fix Pool in Hermanus.
Oh, okay. And how well known is this?
This time of day to visit this pool is at sunrise, which is where I little, the light was just arriving. It's very well known. It's along that coastline, and there's a restaurant that's been built around it. So a little bit less intrusive than Brass Bell, so much, still very, but it is very popular. So later in the day, people are jumping off rocks, climbing up
Hmm.
rocks, spectacular, quiet, calm, cold.
And with the people, the interaction, you mentioned the sort of pre-apart or the apartheid era. I take it the pools were then segregated, not only male female that you alluded to earlier, but by color as well.
Mm. They were. So I've detailed in the book the pools that used to be limited to white people or people of color, and what the thinking was on that limitation, and which those pools were, and which ones have been opened up. They're all opened up. In fact, the city of Cape Town was far more lenient than the rest of the country in terms of the desegregation of
Mm.
the pools. By 1989, the pools were open and available. In fact, the beaches as a whole were. So I've included those details because I think it adds a layer of complexity and sort of reverence to when we're swimming in the pools where we might not otherwise have had access,
Yeah.
to now recognize what a privilege it is to be able to access these spaces that are free, open, and safe for everyone in the country.
I'm amazed. You say free, open, and safe. I'm amazed somebody hasn't gone, hang on a second. Let's put a fence around this and a toll booth, and you've got to pay X amount of rand to get into swim because we need to maintain these pools. Obviously, they've got to be kept clean. And you were saying City of Cape Town does have a limited budget when it comes to doing maintenance, but you can't have sort of the flotsam and jetsam that we find on our coastal beaches ending up in the tidal pools?
Well, interestingly enough, there are some pools that do have a fence around them, like Maiden's Cove. So they're open for the most part, but in summertime you are required to stand in a queue and pay an entrance fee, but it's minimal and hopefully not exclusionary. The same is required at Silverstone Tidal Pool, which is further up the coast, and it's part of
Mhm.
a resort. So if you're wanting to access the
Ah,
pool, you need to pay a day rate or a resort fee to access
yeah.
the pool. But I think for the most part, the city of Cape Town has somehow found, scrounged whatever's been required, money to maintain the pools. So they're kind of slowly improving them and making them accessible, I think, because of the popularity of the pools and how much everybody loves them.
Did you have a tight deadline with this? You know, if you're writing a novel, I suppose, Sarai, you know when the end is, or the your editor will say to you, you have a deadline of X, and the day before you just write the end, send me the manuscript, and that's it. But with a work like this that involves a lot of information, it's not a novel by any manner of means. Um, did you A, have a deadline, and did the book automatically say to you, enough, Sarai? You've written what you needed to write. Move on. There's volume two, three, four, and five that lie ahead. Save something for those.
Yeah, I mean, my publisher, I was very keen to include all of the books of the Western Cape and just make it a definitive guide. So
Right.
we include all the pools from Gansbaai all the way up to George, because there are a number more, about 12 or 13 more to be added in. But needs must, there was a deadline, there was a requirement to stop somewhere, and actually, within reason, driving within 2 hours of Cape Town, I think, is perfectly reasonable to
Yeah.
access the pools. Obviously, I'm going to keep going on this subject because I am that way inclined. So there's the documentary coming, there'll be a second edition. But yeah, my publisher was quite clear. There's a deadline. Things need to happen within a certain time period. Get on it, get finished.
Yeah. Let's get it
Yeah.
onto the shelves. Are you one of those authors now? Your photograph, your face, should I say, is not on the back cover. So I can't say
It's
to you,
not.
no,
It's
no,
not even there. Look,
it's not even
I'm
there.
gazing off into not even there. I'm gazing off into the distance.
No, because sometimes authors who do have I always ask them, do you go into your local bookstore and sort of stand with a book going, this is an interesting book. I wonder who wrote it. Or if it's this way on a shelf, if it's spine forward, do you go in and go, no, let's move it this way, or move it to a different shelf altogether? Why is it stuck away, in local authors? Let's put it in international places to visit or some such thing. Are you that type of author? Or do you just walk
You
past
can
a
bet, you can bet I'm going to be that person. You can absolutely bet I'm going to be that person. I worked in publishing for many years. In fact, I started off working at Exclusive Books for many, many years.
so you
And I
know
was
the
that
drill.
person who was, yeah, I was that person who's, sort of the author would come in and want to know why their book wasn't on the front shelf. So I'm not going to take it quite that far. But my ex-boss who ran Jonathan Ball Publishers would
Mhm.
say the only thing standing between him and a sale is the bookseller. And so
Right.
whilst I don't think that's quite true, I do think there's a lot to be said for making sure the book is in the right section. And this is not an easily categorized book. It's a
No, it
guidebook, but
isn't.
there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And so, I have popped into a local bookstore and said, my book is in the Sunday Times. Please, will you stock it? And they went, we're aware of it. I was like, but can you stock it, please? So I've had lots of support from many of the chain bookstores, which I'm super excited about, and maybe the indies will catch up. But I haven't put my face on the cover because I didn't. I wanted to foreground the pools and not
Fair
kind of
enough.
make a
Well,
splash
you
of myself.
you can do that for books two, three, four, and five. You can put your face on.
In fact, we're just increasingly the size of my photograph in the pool.
The book is now available. It's a great gift for the end of the year, whatever you're celebrating, birthdays, Christmases, bar mitzvahs, divorces. Who knows? It can fit into all of those. If you want to take up cold water swimming, all the information you need is in here. If you are going down to the coast for end of year festivities, why not get yourself a copy and then visit some of, you don't have to visit all of them. There isn't a form in the, like a birder's guide. There isn't a pool
No.
list them off. I've visited this, I've visited that, and then put on Facebook, your photograph with the book, and I've visited all 34. There's no first prize for that. But is it available as an ebook?
It will be. I think my book publisher has had so much to deal with at the end of the year with other
Yeah.
publications as well as mine that the intention is that it will be an ebook. I'm not sure yet if it is on Amazon or any of the other online retailers as an ebook, but it will
Mm.
be. That's the intention. But for now, it's available at your usual suspects: Wordsworth and Exclusive Books, loot.co.za, Take a Lot.
I love the way we used to say it's available at all good bookstores. Now I always add it's available at good, bad, and indifferent bookstores. Go and have a look. Whatever your favorite bookstore is, pop in, ask them if they have a copy, and if they don't, ask them to get one. The book is Tidal Pools of the Western Cape. It's published by Rockhopper Books. It is available now. I've been talking to Serai Dowling. Serai, thank you so very much for joining me here on Off the Shelf.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. It was lovely to talk about what is clearly one of my favorite subjects.
My guest today on Off the Shelf has been Serai Dowling. If you'd like to follow me, well, you can. Off the Shelf, it's as simple as that. And until the next time, from yours truly, David Batshoffen, thank you for watching.